Ben Whitaker never liked the way the forest line behind his childhood home just ended. Not with a natural fade into the underbrush, but a clean, unnatural stop, as if the trees knew better than to grow beyond a certain invisible line. The kind of thing a kid notices and forgets until he grows up and realizes nothing about it makes sense. You're not supposed to remember things like that. But you do. And now so do I. Because I've seen what happens when someone crosses it. This isn't folklore or some Reddit rabbit hole. It's what Ben whispered into the side of my neck 3 nights ago, just before he vanished. No one else heard it. No one else even remembers him being there. But I do. I do. And I wish to. God, I didn't. See, it started with a question. One of those bottom-of-the-barrel, sleep-deprived, way too late to be talking kind of questions. The kind that hangs in the air like smoke and leaves something burning in your chest. Ben leaned in close, eyes glassy but clear in a way that cut through the bourbon, and said, "What if we're the only species insane enough to live next to things that can kill us for fun, and call it dominance?" I laughed. You probably would have too, but it wasn't a joke, not to him and not to me, not anymore. Because after he said it, the lights flickered. Not all at once, just the hallway. The one that leads to the back door, the one we always keep locked even though there's never been a reason to. And then he stood up, walked straight to it, and opened it like something had called his name. But nothing made a sound. Not even the wind. He turned back just once and said something I can't repeat. Not because I forgot it, but because every time I try, my throat locks up like the words aren't mine to speak. And then he was gone. No one remembers Ben Whitaker. His house is still there, but empty, boarded up like it's been that way for years. His name doesn't show up in school records, not even in the yearbooks where I know he was voted most likely to survive the apocalypse. His social accounts? Deleted, wiped, scrubbed like he never existed. But my phone still has one saved voicemail. The timestamp says 2:07 a.m., 3 minutes before he disappeared. It's just 3 seconds long. A breath, then static, then a voice I haven't heard in years, my grandfather's. He died in 2011, but it's his voice, calm and distant, whispering, "They see you now." So here's the thing. This story, you're not supposed to know it. And yet here you are, watching it unfold like some twisted cosmic dare. Maybe it's already too late. Maybe it began the second you clicked play. But I need to tell you what I found after Ben vanished, what's buried in the forest past that invisible line, what the animals avoid, what we kept building around like we were meant to claim it. There's something buried beneath our feet, something older than language. And if I tell you what happened when I dug it up, if I show you what moved in the dark and called me by a name I've never told anyone, it won't just change what you believe. It will change you, but you can still back out. You can stop this now, forget you ever heard his name, delete the file like it never existed. Or you can keep watching and find out what was waiting for us long before we ever thought we ruled this planet. Because when I show you what I found in that hollow place, when I tell you who answered back, you'll understand the truth. Ben tried to give me before they took him. Just one truth. One terrifying, impossible truth that I cannot unsee. We are not the apex. We are the bait. The moment Ben's grandfather's voice faded, whispering, "They see you now," everything changed, or at least it felt like it did. But I can't tell you for sure, because even now, weeks later, I'm not sure what actually happened, or what my mind has twisted in the shadows of sleepless nights. The line between what's real and what my brain is trying to protect me from has blurred into a haze thicker than any nightmare I've ever fought to wake from. The forest behind Ben's house didn't just hold secrets. It began to rewrite mine, rearranging memories like some cruel puppeteer I couldn't see, but somehow always felt breathing down my neck. At first, I thought it was just trauma. The roar. You can't shake after losing someone the world pretends never existed. But then the strange things started. Little things. Audio glitches in the recordings I made. Tiny static bursts that sometimes sounded like faint voices calling my name or whispering phrases I swear I didn't say. Recordings where my own voice responded, but I don't remember speaking those words. Sometimes entire chunks of time would vanish from my memory, hours slipping through my fingers like smoke, leaving me with a sinking certainty that something was erasing me bit by bit. I kept telling myself it was stress, isolation, the weight of this real, unsolved mystery grinding down my sanity. But every time I tried to share what I was going through, the hesitation in people's eyes, the way they'd change the subject, avoid my calls, or ask if I'd been drinking, made me question even harder what I was clinging to. What they don't want you to remember, they say. But what if what I'm forgetting isn't just forgotten? What if it's been deliberately wiped away? Who decides what's safe to remember, and who gets erased? My nights became an unending reel of half-remembered dreams bleeding into wakefulness, where the voice of Ben's grandfather echoed like a warning I couldn't ignore but couldn't fully grasp. And then she came, Clara. I met her on the edge of the same forest where Ben disappeared. She was like a shard of glass, beautiful, sharp, but impossible to hold without cutting yourself. She claimed she was a journalist too, chasing down the truth behind what no one tells you, drawn by the same vanishing threads I was unraveling. But even before she spoke, I could tell she was different, like she carried pieces of a puzzle that didn't quite fit together. She told me she had her own ghosts, her own lost memories, but everything she said felt like it was laced with something else, half-truths, carefully folded into lies or maybe just fractured reflections of her own fractured mind. Clara's presence was a strange balm and a sharp wound all at once. She questioned everything with me, but sometimes her questions twisted into accusations, making me doubt my own reality. She'd say things like, "Are you sure you saw Ben? Or was it just a shadow your brain conjured to protect itself?" Once, she pulled out an old tape recorder, insisting it held a recording from the night Ben vanished. But when we played it, instead of his voice, all we heard was a garbled mess of static and fragmented breathing. "Maybe the truth isn't in the voices we catch," she whispered, eyes haunted. "Maybe it's in what's left unsaid, the silence between the sounds." I wanted to believe her, to trust that we were two broken people holding on to fragments of the same nightmare. But the more time I spent with Clara, the more I saw cracks in her story. Small things that didn't add up, memories she couldn't recall, inconsistencies in her own past. She confessed to hallucinations, episodes where she lost days, waking, up with bruises she couldn't explain. Was she another victim of whatever dark thread we'd stumbled on, or was she a symptom of it? Or worse, was she the reason I was losing my grip on what was real? The forest seemed to stretch and contract around us, a living entity watching, waiting. Some nights, I swear I saw figures lurking just beyond the trees, faces that vanished when I blinked, voices humming on the edge of hearing. I began to notice strange symbols carved into the bark, almost invisible unless you looked closely. Shapes that matched no language I'd ever seen, but that felt eerily familiar, like memories I was missing. Ben had mentioned something about the bait, about how humans were the only species crazy enough to not just survive alongside deadly creatures, but to believe they ruled them. But what if ruling was the illusion? What if we were just pieces on a board, waiting for a game to end we never knew we were playing? The more I peeled back, the less I could hold on to solid ground. Friends I thought I trusted began to avoid me. Conversations I swore I'd had erased themselves from my mind, like they were never spoken. And all the while the line between mental breakdown and something far darker crept closer, until I could no longer tell if the voices in the recordings were ghosts, my own fractured psyche, or something altogether different, something watching me from the other side of perception, waiting to slip through when I least expected it. I don't know how this ends. I don't even know if it began with Ben, or if he was just the first crack in a mirror long shattered. What I do know is this: the truth isn't buried in evidence or files or even voices from beyond the grave. It's in the silence, in the things we don't say, the memories we're afraid to face. And in the moments when the world stops making sense and you find yourself staring into the dark, wondering if you're losing your mind, or if the mind was never yours to begin with. Clara's gone now. One day she was here, tangled in this. Mess with me? The next? Nothing. No calls, no messages, just a blank space where she should be. But before she left, she gave me one last thing. A file, encrypted and impossible to open without a key she refused to give me. She said it held answers, but warned, some truths don't want to be found and some memories are meant to stay buried. Now I'm alone. Or maybe I'm not. Because sometimes when the night is still and the silence stretches too long, I swear I hear a voice whispering just beyond the edges of my hearing. A voice that isn't Ben's, or Clara's, or even my grandfather's. A voice that calls my name with a promise and a threat I can't yet understand. And the question that haunts me, the one Ben posed so quietly before he vanished, echoes louder every day. Are we really the masters of this world? Or are we just the only ones mad enough to pretend? And if that's true, then what waits when the madness ends? There was a moment, fleeting, fragile, when I thought I'd found the answer. The kind of answer that settles into your bones and tells you everything's going to be all right. That maybe, just maybe, the twisted mess of missing time, vanished people, cryptic voices and fragmented memories could be tied to something simple. Something we could finally name and understand. I had spent weeks crawling through archives, piecing together every scrap of data I could find on Ben, Clara, and the eerie forest that swallowed them whole. And then, buried beneath an old police report from a town just a few miles north, a name emerged: Harper's Hollow. A place tied to disappearances from decades ago, cases never closed, memories wiped clean by official files stamped inconclusive. The report described a strange series of vanishings, all centered around a derelict cabin at the edge of a forest that matched the description of the one behind Ben's house. It spoke of strange lights, whispering voices caught on tape, and children claiming to hear names no one else had ever said aloud. It felt like a breakthrough, a key turning quietly in the lock. I packed up my gear and drove out before dawn, heart hammering with a cocktail of hope and dread, hoping the mystery uncovered here would finally crack wide open. The road to Harper's Hollow was a ribbon of cracked asphalt, flanked by towering pines, their branches scraping the sky like brittle fingers reaching for something unseen. The air smelled of moss and forgotten secrets, thick with that damp, earthy weight that clings to the skin and seeps into your bones. As I stepped from the car and into the shadow of the trees, everything from the reports to the tapes came rushing back, folding together like a nightmare I thought I'd left behind. The cabin stood at the edge of a clearing, rotten wood sagging, windows dark and hollow like empty eye sockets. It looked like it had been abandoned for decades, but in a way it felt alive, like it was breathing beneath the decay, watching, waiting. I stepped closer, the air growing colder with every footfall, and my breath hung in front of me in soft clouds. I pulled out the recorder and hit play on the last tape Clara gave me, hoping the encrypted file had a key hidden in the metadata, or something that could unlock it. Instead, what played was a chilling, almost imperceptible whisper layered beneath. The static, a name I recognized immediately, though I couldn't place from where. It was the same name that the baby in the old tape had spoken, the name Ben had almost whispered before he disappeared, the name that haunted every fleeting thought I'd had since this nightmare began. And then it hit me. This wasn't just some isolated haunting or an unsolved mystery buried in the past. It was a pattern, a cycle repeating itself through generations, through memories wiped clean and rewritten. The same voices, the same vanishing acts, the same chilling moments where reality felt like it splintered. A memory glitch. Something was watching, always watching, and it had been for longer than anyone could remember. I felt like I was standing on the edge of a truth so vast and terrible, it threatened to swallow me whole. For a moment I believed I could hold it. I thought I'd outwitted the darkness that had stalked me, pieced together enough to pull back the curtain and stare directly into the abyss. But then, as I stepped back from the cabin, my foot caught on something buried beneath the leaves, a rusted locket, its chain broken and the glass cracked, but inside was a faded photograph. I brushed away the dirt, heart sinking as the faces came into focus. 2 children, their eyes unnervingly familiar. One was a boy with the same sharp jawline and haunted eyes as Ben. The other was a little girl whose smile twisted oddly in the dim light. The back of the locket had a date engraved, 1967, and a name, my mother's name. The weight of it hit me like a freight train. This wasn't just Ben's story, or Clara's, or mine. It was a legacy I had inherited, a shadow creeping through, my bloodline that I'd never dared to face. The unsettling realization rolled over me like a wave. I had lived through this before. Not as a bystander, but as the child in the photograph. The girl whose smile was a mask hiding terror I'd buried deep, forgotten by my conscious mind but never gone. That flicker of recognition, the unease that something in this story wasn't, new but painfully, intimately familiar, swept through me like a cold wind through a broken window. I stumbled back to the car, clutching the locket like a lifeline, thoughts spiraling in a fog of disbelief and fear. The forest behind me seemed to pulse with a low hum, as if breathing in time with my panicked heartbeat. And then I saw it. Movement in the shadows. Not distant, but close. Watching me, waiting for me to realize the truth I wasn't ready for. The truth that the danger I'd been trying to outrun was never outside me. It was inside. Something ancient and patient had been lurking in the edges of my memories, in the spaces between what was remembered and what was erased. It wasn't just a force beyond comprehension. It was personal, psychological, suffocating in its intimacy. It had been watching from the very beginning. As I drove away from Harper's Hollow, a sudden, piercing clarity struck me. The mystery wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The pieces I'd thought fit neatly together were shards of a broken mirror reflecting fragments of a nightmare too vast to see all at once. Every truth I'd uncovered was just another layer of deception. Every whispered name a trap. The forest, the disappearances, the voices. They were a smokescreen masking something far darker, something that thrived on doubt, on the unraveling of sanity. Back in the quiet of my apartment, I pulled the locket open again, searching for something I couldn't name. And then I noticed it, an inscription so small it almost escaped notice, etched faintly into the metal under years of grime. "You're not crazy, they lied to you." The words burned into me like acid, because now I realized the biggest twist of all wasn't the forest or the vanishings, but the fact that the story I'd been living wasn't just a mystery uncovered. It was a lie told over and over, with me as the unwilling keeper of a secret no one wanted to remember. The truth behind the memories, the voices, and the shadows wasn't just out there. It was inside me, tangled with every thought, every fear, every forgotten scream, and that means you have to watch it all again. Because nothing is what it seemed. Not Ben, not Clara, not even me. The story is a loop, a cruel reflection forcing you to question what you've seen, what you think you know, and whether the memories you hold on to are yours at all. This isn't just a real unsolved mystery anymore. It's a puzzle designed to break your mind piece by piece until the only thing left is the darkness watching, waiting, and the quiet certainty that the forest and the danger it hides never really let you go. There's a weight settling in, heavier than anything I've felt before, an invisible pressure pressing down on the very edges of thought, twisting reality, until it feels fragile and worn, like an old photograph left too long in the sun. But here's the thing. I'm not alone. I was never alone. I didn't know it then because the truth is always the last thing you want to see. But the threads I've been pulling have started to unravel a web so vast, so deeply woven into the fabric of everything, that it's impossible to look away. Others like me exist, scattered like ghosts in the static, watching and waiting, caught in the same relentless loop of fractured memories and whispered secrets. We are connected, strangers bound by an invisible tether, sharing a collective ache that no one else acknowledges, A silent conspiracy that doesn't just threaten our minds, but questions what it means to be ourselves. It started with the messages, small at first, almost too cryptic to notice. Emails with no sender, subject lines like "you were right all along" or "found footage from 20 years ago, watch before it disappears," buried in spam folders or slipping through the cracks of forgotten inboxes. I wasn't the only one receiving these. They arrived like fragments from another world, puzzles begging to be solved, each one dropping pieces of a story so distorted and dark that to follow it meant surrendering to a truth no one wanted to face. These weren't just random signals, they were carefully coded transmissions meant for us, the ones who had glimpsed the edges of something terrible, the ones who had heard the names that shouldn't be spoken and seen the shadows lurking just beyond sight. Shared dreams became the next layer, impossible to explain but undeniable in their clarity. Night after night, I found myself walking the same fog-drenched forest, the same dilapidated cabin looming like a specter in the distance, always just out of reach. But it wasn't just my dream. It was our dream. Others described the same. Twisted landscapes, the same chilling voices whispering secrets too fragmented to hold but too urgent to ignore. In these dreams, symbols appeared, faint, almost subliminal shapes carved into tree bark, flickering signs that no one outside our circle could decipher, but that felt like a language all their own. Each mark, each symbol was a call, a message, sent across the boundaries of consciousness to remind us that the story we thought was ours was shared, orchestrated, and far more complex than any one person's memory. And then came the visual signs, small, haunting images captured in unexpected places, often only glimpsed in the corner of the eye or buried in the noise of old footage and grainy photographs. Some were frames pulled from found footage from 20 years ago, videos no one had ever released, locked away under layers of government secrecy or forgotten in private collections. Others were markings etched onto walls, on forgotten subway tunnels, even on the peeling wallpaper of abandoned motels. Symbols that pulsed with a strange familiarity, as if encoded to bypass the conscious mind and speak directly to something deeper, something primal and ancient inside us all. They whispered, in silence, that this wasn't just a story. It was a signal, a broadcast sent from the shadows to those who dared to look. Into this growing storm stepped another voice, an observer who claimed to have seen the whole game from the beginning. They called themselves Mara, a name I still don't fully trust, but one I can't ignore. She appears through intercepted messages, encrypted files, and fleeting glimpses on dark forums, always just beyond reach, but unmistakably real. Mara doesn't offer comfort or easy answers. Instead, she shatters the fragile illusions, pulling back the veil with a cold precision that feels almost merciless. From her perspective, the story isn't about haunted forests or vanished people. It's about control, about the mechanisms that shape memory and identity, the invisible forces molding who we think we are. She warns that what we call reality is a fragile construct, a malleable thing controlled by a force so pervasive that to resist it means questioning every memory, every feeling, every thought that defines us. There is no accident. Mara's messages say, no coincidence. You are part of something older than you can imagine, caught in a cycle designed to keep you tethered. The memories you think are yours are fragments, glitches implanted to test your resistance, to see how far you will go before surrendering. You are not broken, you are chosen, but the cost of choice is eternal vigilance. Her warnings cut through, the haze like shards of ice, but they come with their own riddles. If Mara is telling the truth, and I've come to believe she is, then the question becomes, who is she? Is she a liberator or another piece of the system, another voice in the machinery designed to keep us guessing, doubting, unraveling? Her presence deepens the dread, layering it with a profound loneliness. In a world where identity can be manipulated and memories can be stolen or rewritten, trust becomes the rarest commodity, and reality a fragile, flickering candle in an endless night. The conspiracy folds in on itself. What the government never released, documents, recordings, even official denials, becomes the backdrop against which our personal histories unravel. Names disappear from records, voices are erased from tapes, and entire events are quietly scrubbed from public consciousness. Yet the symbols remain, persistent and haunting, embedded in places we'd never think to look but that feel intimately connected to who we are, or who we thought we were. They suggest a larger force at play, something watching from the edges, something patient and unyielding, shaping the story not just of one lost boy or one broken family, but of all of us who have ever doubted the reality we live in. And the most unsettling part? This force isn't distant or abstract. It's deeply personal. It knows your fears, your memories, the fragments of your past you keep locked away. It whispers your name in the dark and watches you from the corners of your mind. It blurs the line between who you are and what you've been told to believe about yourself. It's a shadow in the mirror, a flicker of doubt in every cherished memory, a question with no answer. So here you are, now part of this web, drawn in by glimpses and whispers, by symbols and dreams that only you can decode. You've seen the threads stretch across time and space, felt the pull of something just beyond understanding. You know the story isn't over. You never were just a witness. You are part of it. The questions you've held close now hang in the air. Who is watching? Who is controlling? And most terrifying of all, what does it mean when the memories you trust aren't your own? The truth is no longer hidden. It's pressed against your skin, breathing with you, waiting. The story you thought you knew is just the surface. Now, you have a choice. Look deeper into the darkness with us or turn away and wonder forever what was real. But remember this. Sometimes the only way to see clearly is to lose yourself first. And once you do, there's no going back. There comes a moment in every story when the questions no longer matter. The what, the who, the where dissolve like smoke into the air, and only the why remains, sharp and unrelenting. That moment arrived for me not with a bang, but with a silence so deep it felt like drowning on dry land. I sat alone in my apartment, the locket heavy in my palm, the voices and symbols that had haunted me like shadows finally converging into a single, unbearable weight pressing down on my chest. The forest, the disappearances, the fractured memories. They weren't random. They were an echo of something deeper, a mirror held up to the fragility and resilience of being human, the raw edges where fear and hope collide. It was no longer about solving a mystery, but confronting a truth that demanded everything. My past, my identity, my very soul. In the quiet that followed my frantic search, I found clarity in the most painful confession I've ever dared to speak aloud, first to myself, then into the empty room. I admitted that I was broken, that the fractures in my memory were not just glitches but scars left by a lifetime of trying to forget what I knew I could never escape, that the voice whispering names no one else heard wasn't just a ghost or a trick of the mind. It was a part of me, tangled with pain and love, fear and defiance. It was a reminder that the darkness I'd been running from was not outside me, but inside, living in the spaces where I'd locked away my childhood. My family, my truth. I was both the hunter and the hunted, the seeker and the lost. The choice stretched out before me like an endless night, to surrender to the unraveling madness, to let the memories consume and rewrite me, or to embrace the terrifying awakening that came with knowing the truth might save me or destroy me utterly. This wasn't a crossroads. It was a plunge into the unknown, a reckoning that asked whether I could hold myself together when everything familiar shattered. It was the moment where human vulnerability became a battleground, where the simple act of believing, in memory, in identity, in love, became an act of defiance against the darkness that sought to erase it all. I realized then that what we fear most isn't death or disappearance. It's losing who we are, being swallowed by a void so absolute that even the echo of our own name fades away. But in that terrifying void, I found something unexpected. A sliver of light, fragile but fiercely alive. The mystery, the haunting, voices, the symbols. They were not just curses but calls to remember what it means to be human, to fight for memory and identity in a world that wants to erase both. to hold onto the threads of connection, of love and loss, even when the story itself seems to twist and turn beyond comprehension. As I sat there, feeling the weight of all I'd uncovered, the air around me thick with the silence of 1,000 untold stories, I understood that this awakening was not an end but a beginning, a brutal, beautiful truth that we carry inside us whether we know it or not. The question was no longer what happened to me or to Ben or Clara, but why we carry this darkness, why it clings to us like a second skin. Maybe it was a test, a crucible forging our humanity in the fire of doubt and fear. Or maybe it was something older, something eternal, reminding us that the greatest mysteries are not in the outside world but in the fragile, luminous heart of what it means to be alive. And so I sit here, on the edge of what I know and what I can't yet see, caught between despair and hope, terror and truth. The shadows that chased me have not vanished. They watch still, waiting for the moment to rise again. But now I am awake to the possibility that in facing the darkness, in naming the unnameable, I might find a way to keep the light alive inside me, to hold on to myself even as the world tries to pull me apart. If you're listening, if you've been drawn into this web of whispers and shadows, know this: you are not alone. The story is bigger than any of us, tangled in the hidden spaces between memory and forgetting, truth and illusion. It demands that we look deeper, that we never stop questioning what we think we know, because the price of complacency is the erasure of everything that makes us human. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for stories you were never meant to hear. Until next time, remember, some truths don't want to be found.